Hi, I'm Bruce Linsday. I'm here at Motorcyclepedia today, and we're here to discuss one of the rare marks of motorcycles. It's the Dion Bouton, who not many people have heard of, but at the turn of the century, it was the largest motor manufacturer in the whole world. They're made in France, made in Paris, had a lot of breakthroughs, and people are still copying this design today. Well, it started with Count Albert de Dion. He was a French count. He was from nobility, and no formal mechanical training whatsoever. But they claim he was interested in steam toys and early mechanical things. He had a real interest, and he had money. And he met George Bouton and Tricycle, who were both making steam toys, and were interested in making lightweight steam things at the time. Dion was, he's like a 6-foot guy with a barrel chest. He's huge. You see a picture of George Bouton sitting next to him. Bouton comes up to about here on him. The three of them got together with Dion's money and Bouton Tricycle's steam expertise. They built a lightweight boiler so you could actually make a steam car that was manageable by one person could operate it. You didn't need a team of guys to fire it up like a locomotive. It was pretty good for steam, but steam was on its way out in 1885. They worked that for 10 years, and they sold a lot of boilers, but it was steam. You had to come out an hour before and get your fire going and get the steam, head of steam up, and they were a lot of trouble to run. And like I say, the explosion motor, the Paris Exposition came up, and explosion motors were demonstrated there, and everybody had big ideas what you could do with them. This is such new technology. In fact, they had kind of a bad reputation when they first came out. They called these explosion motors because the noise was so loud. They never heard noises like that. A boiler doesn't make any noise, it just hisses a little bit, but these things just kaboom, boom, boom. I read in one of the old books that one of the guys said it barks like a dog and smells like a cat. That was what they thought of explosion motors back then. When Dion Bouton decided explosion motors were the way to go, Tricycle bailed out, and he stayed with the steam, and of course he fell into oblivion just because they were done. At that time, internal combustion engines were brand new. Most of them were stationary, really heavy, had exposed crankshafts, great big steel flywheels on them to keep them running. And they're mainly used for pumps and stationary things. They weren't really suitable for vehicles. One of the most successful things they did was this tricycle. They built tens of thousands of these, and made them from 1895 to about 1901. They built thousands of them. They sold all over the world. These motors are sold under license all over the world. In fact, I think they sold more motors than they sold complete vehicles. I think they sold like 200,000 motors in that 6-year period. What we have is an 1897 Dion Bouton. It was made in France. This particular bike was bought in Europe, and we don't know the exact history on it. It had this number 11 painted on, and that was painted on when the bike was brand new, so we assume it was either in a race or a rally somewhere in the 1800s. When it arrived here in America, the forks were badly bent, and the front rim had been replaced. When it came, it did have that horn on it, so somebody's using it for road use, and it's pretty unmolested. It's an original wire harness on it, original paint, original badges. 3 of the 4 pedal rubbers are original. One of the straight lines are original. This one's been replaced. That was replaced a long time ago. And it's got the original Volcanic grips. That was before any plastic or Bakelite or anything. They call it Volcanite. It's what they make bowling balls out of, is what the material on the handle grips are. This has a dead axle. You can see, this is your driving axle here. It's just a steel rod. Got support bearings at each end. You got this big heavy axle up here that actually supports the motor, the frame, everything. So the axle is only supported right next to the wheels, which is a really good place to support an axle. Get a bump or something, well, the stress isn't on the axle, it's on the frame. They use that for independent suspension cars for years, and in fact, I think it's still in use. That was a patented design. He patented that real early, back in the steam days. He patented that dead axle. It's also got differential between the 2 rear wheels. So the 2 wheels can turn at a different speed to go around corners, and that was very early for differential. They put a really good muffler on them, so this is an amazingly quiet bike. They tried to calm down that explosion. So, wouldn't make that horrible noise. They're afraid of that. Thought it was like a gun going off, like a machine gun. Lightweight, high speed was, that was a big thing. That was suitable for, a vehicle. Inside the crankcase, these 2 flywheels and a crank pin and a connecting rod. So the flywheels make up the crankshaft. That's all inside the crankcase. So all the oil's contained. The weight's way down. It's a lightweight engine. It's an air-cooled engine. Most of the first ones were water-cooled, which are very heavy. And the big thing is the stationary engines ran at like 500 RPM, very low RPM, very just heavy slugging motors. And this little guy would run over 3,000 RPM. It was a whole different ballpark. That's still the basic design for motorcycle engines today. There's still 2 flywheels, an aluminum crankcase. He came up with the 4 studs to hold the cylinder down. Harley uses that today. Left-hand grip here is actually an electrical switch. So if you get in trouble, you can shut it off instantly. You have a key switch in the center here. You got a little key you can plug in. Plus you got to turn the switch. It says, on and off, run and stop. So if you get in any trouble, you can shut it off. That's the electrical system. It's all a stack up of dry cell batteries here for ignition. So as long as you got batteries, you got spark. You got all these little levers here. This one here is just compression release. It just opens and closes a little valve on the top of the motor. For starting, you can let the compression go, so when you pedal it pedals real easy. And you close it, you got compression, and then it'll start. This next one here is your spark advance, which is one of Dion Bouton's revolutionary things, was controlling the motor speed by the spark timing. Back this time, they didn't just use carburetor throttles. In fact, this barely has a carburetor throttle. You had a little timing chest, just got a set of points on the end of the cam, and it rotates that whole timing chest. So you'd have it spark as late as top dead center, or spark like 30 degrees before top dead center, which is like maximum RPM for a motor like this to run. These other 2 were what would pass for a throttle. You have one controls gas and one controls air, so you mix the gas and air right here on the bike. So you want, give it about a quarter throttle air and about half throttle gas, and that's a good starting position. Well, this is not a carburetor like anything known today. This is called a surface carburetor, and this whole big tank here is the carburetor. The gas level is about this high. It draws air in on the top, sucks across the surface of the gasoline, and out this squiggly tube into the intake valve. So you're just picking the fumes up off the top of the gas in the tank. So you don't have very, very good throttle control. You play around to get kind of a happy spot where you get the air and the gas mixed. So yeah, it's running pretty good. You pretty much control the speed with the spark advance and retard, which is nothing like today. Today the spark's all set in one place and you do it all with the throttle. It actually gets pretty good gas mileage. Because of the surface carburetor, you can't flood it. You can't get any raw gas into the motor because you're only sucking vapor off the top of the gas. This probably get 50 to 75 miles per gallon. The range was limited, first of all, by the dry cell batteries. It's a total loss electrical system. You stacked up your 4 dry cell batteries, turned it on, and it's drawing off the batteries all the time it's running. So nothing recharges anything, so they're running down all the time. So it's total loss ignition, total loss oiling system. It's just got a little oil cup on the back. You can drip a little oil into the crankcase, but it only holds a quarter of a pint of oil. So you run out of oil, you're done. It holds about half a gallon of gasoline, which would probably go longer than the battery or the oil. So this wasn't something you traveled on very far. You had to be prepared to go anywhere. Once there are a few of these out there, once he sold a couple hundred of these, of course racing was very popular. I say it's the fastest thing on the planet Earth when they were out. So you get 10 of them together, we want to see who was a little bit faster. They say 30 miles an hour in 1895 was, that was like the land speed record. Most of them went from a rolling start because these things are direct drive, they don't have a clutch. You got to pedal them to get them going. Most have a starting line and everybody have a pusher so you get your rider on there, you have the thing all warmed up, ready to go, and each guy'd have a pusher, and they drop the flag and you have your pusher and you hope you're started right away. That was a big advantage, and there was as much endurance races as anything. They're usually fairly long, like 5 miles, 10 miles, and of course a lot of them didn't finish because a lot of people didn't know what they were doing, and it was all really new stuff. They put a lot of people in the motor business, motorcycle business, and the people that didn't buy their motors copied them, so that was the start of it all. But like I say, they put a lot of other people in the business, so they had competition, and they were looking toward the lightweight automobile. Thought that would just be a little more user-friendly, and so they had a lot of competition in the motorcycle business. So they went for the lightweight car, and that was fairly successful. But it didn't set the world on fire. There's a lot of competition there too. By the time they're doing it, Henry Ford is in the game, and a lot of other people were in. Peugeot was in the game, and there were a lot of players. They made some ambulances, and a few commercial vehicles for the war, but it wasn't high production, and not many survived. And I don't think it was that big a thing really. They did make some aircraft engines, not terribly successful, but they made a 12-cylinder rotary engine where the whole engine swung around and the crankshaft was mounted solid. They made a 12-cylinder, which is really unusual. If you look at all the rotary engines, they always had an odd number of cylinders. I think the DDN's the only rotary engine that ever had an even number of cylinders. And there's some reasons for that when we get into the connecting rod geometry and the balance of the thing, that odd number of cylinders worked a whole lot better. So this wasn't a great idea, and I don't think they made many. There's some photographs of them, but I've never seen a picture of an airplane with one in it flying, so I don't think it was that big a thing. But yeah, in the late teens, they weren't selling that many of the lightweight cars. There's a lot of competition there. So they decided to go for the big money, expensive, heavy luxury cars. They came out with a V8 motor, which was pretty unique at the time. There were a couple other people making them, but they made just beautiful coachwork, really expensive cars for just the very rich. They could sell one car and make as much money as selling, 20 or 30 of the little cars. So they're almost all custom made. They're very expensive, and that lasted until the early 20s. And then they had too much competition there because they had, Rolls-Royce and a bunch of other people in the game by then. And they just kind of faded away, which was unfortunate because the turn of the century, they were the largest engine manufacturer in the world. And today, nobody ever heard of them.